A very warm welcome to the participants of the Proteomics Advanced Winter School 2021. Presented by Proteomics Lab, Indian Institute of Technology, Bombay. Day 4, Targeted Proteomics. Lecture 1, Introduction to Targeted Proteomics.
So I'll give you some overview of targeted proteomics based experiments. We will actually start some hands-on experiment in the lab using a triple quadrupole TSQ ARTIS based mass spectrometer. And then we will have a session on the basics of selected reaction monitoring assay. So as I started discussing that, you can always identify the protein abundance from different technologies. It could be even gel-based approaches like 2D gels or 2D dyes, or eye-track or label-free quantification, or even sometimes protein arrays. So varieties of ways you can measure how much protein abundance you can see the change in that. And then that leads you to the large number of still proteins which are as a part of your data-centric method, which looks very high potential. But you want to then narrow down your hypothesis and you want to focus which among those are going to give you high confidence. So are there proteins and peptides which are quite reproducible, which you can also develop into single test? And can you perform those on the large cohort of the patients, large number of samples, and do more on the targeted centric manner? So move from the abundance based data centric to the specific peptides and proteins targeted centric manner. So you have seen these kind of analysis when we take a mass spectrometry based differential expression data set. We process them with different type of software like MaxQuant, Proteome Discoverer, and then you have seen the Metabonalyst for the secondary data analysis. And you can obtain these kind of heat maps to look at your control versus disease, what kind of proteins are showing differential response, right? So these proteins are quite, having a dynamic range, and not every protein is going to show you exactly same type of change across the individuals given the biological variability in the individuals and the patients. So you are going to have all the time possibility that what you are looking at may not be very robust biomarker per se if you want to utilize that on the large cohort of the patients. So you want to be looking at, first of all, dynamic range of the proteins, how precise your test is going to be, and then of course you have to be very reproducible, which you want to test them out. And finally, can you also do multiplexing of an assay, which can be very cost effective, and also it can help you in validating your test. So targeted proteomics essentially came in the field because proteomics really started a lot of leads coming forward from the proteomics based manuscripts, where people started showing potential biomarkers or candidate proteins in different type of diseases, but many of them were not able to get clinically translatable given the challenges inherent to taking these proteomics identified proteins forward and validate them and make them simple clinical tests, right? So people started, questioning about what proteomics is able to deliver, why it is not reaching to the clinics. And one thought came that, because we are always trying to start with mass spec and other, proteomics based tests, which is looking at only peptide sequences. And then we are trying to simply convert them to protein based tests in the clinical settings. And many times they don't pass the same level of, result output. So can we look at if we are identifying the peptides on the mass spectrometer, why not validate them also from the mass spectrometer? Because then our conditions remain quite similar in terms of how to ionize these peptides, how to detect these peptides, and can we develop the test based on these? And that was, I think, very revolutionary thought, and this became Nature Methods cover in January 2013, which showed that how best, even using triple quadrupole based mass spectrometers, one could try to validate specific peptides and their transitions and develop the selected reaction monitoring test, which is very compatible to your discovery based workflow of proteomics. And very quickly, you can actually do validation of your major leads in the similar type of instrument platforms. While you may use even Orbitrap or QTOFs for the discovery, but here you are using triple quadrupole, so it's still different instrument, but at least the lot of basic analytical approaches remain same in terms of liquid chromatography, in terms of your ionization part, and you already know that these peptides are able to ionize very well in your discovery data set, and you are able to separate them well in the mass analyzer. So you have high probability of detecting these peptides in the triple quadrupole based assays. So based on these, different type of targeted approaches came forward. One which is very popular is selected reaction monitoring, also known as multiple reaction monitoring. Here you are looking at, for a given protein, at least you have 3 peptides of interest, because a protein may have multiple peptide which you have identified from your global data set or discovery data set. But you'd like to take at least 3 of the peptides, and then for each peptide at least 3 translations. So now you have at least one robust data set which can tell you that this protein is actually overexpressing or showing the downregulation, and then you can do the fold changes based on that. So SRM or MRM approach is based on a triple quadrupole based mass spectrometer configuration, whereas an Orbitrap based validation strategy came forward known as PRM or parallel reaction monitoring, which we will talk again subsequently as we go along. SWAT-MS or sequential window acquisition of total high resolution mass spectra, which is one of the DIA method, data independent acquisition method. This is done on a very specialized triple TOF instrument from SciEx. So the generic version you can say as SRM or MRM, all the triple quads can be used. More specialized version on the Orbitrap it is PRM, and on the triple TOF it is SWAT-MS. So now I have borrowed a couple of slides from Brendan, who came here at IIT Bombay for conducting some workshops on Skyline and targeted proteomics. Idea is to use and develop the test of targeted assays, make them very quantitative by working on variety of considerations. For instance, take the retention time libraries, take the spectral libraries of your data what you have acquired on the discovery data set, develop the broad methods. Whatever previous measurements you have done, you can consider those. Then do the refinement of your targeted methods and develop a quantitative assay. This is how you are trying to build a lot of knowledge what you have acquired surrounding to your proteins of interest or disease of interest, and then refine that method. It's like the funneling down, and then come up with a more focused quantitative assay. For doing that, a software known as Skyline is heavily used. And today in our second session on 12:30, we are going to focus more about targeted assay development with the Skyline, and also what are the experimental considerations which one need to keep in mind while developing these kind of tests. But here, you want to look at first building a method. You are running a method, evaluating results, refining your transitions. Again, then now you are going to the same circle by applying the same method to your more independent set of samples. So there are a lot of parts involved in developing these assays, which means you are looking at the abundance of these peptides, whether they can be measured, they are not degradable, they are digested well, you are scheduling your transitions, you are optimizing these MRM transitions. And finally, once you have refined these, then only you are able to build a strong method, which you are going to apply for all the potential sample which you want to validate your hypothesis or test your experimental validation part. So simply in terms of SRM or MRM assay, we are looking at, let's say, generic triple quadrupole based mass spectrometer. We have spoken about basics of these mass spectrometers. The first quadrupole, the set of 4 rods here, this is going to select the precursors, and looking at the the specific precursor ions which you have defined with a Skyline, that for a given peptide, these precursors to be selected for further fragmentation, and those are going to move to the collision cell, that is specific precursor ion, which you are going to do fragmentation in the collision cell, and now you are going to generate the product ions in the second mass filter or the Q3, right? So Q2 the misnomer, and Q1 and Q3, here you are looking at precursor ions and the product ions. And then you are going to measure what happens on my x-axis for the retention time when peptides are coming out of the chromatography, versus their intensity measurement, and that is going to generate you SRM assay, which is looking at the your precursor ion and the product ion pair, and how that is showing you retention time versus intensity graphs, which is going to constitute a translation, and that's what you are going to measure in the selected reaction monitoring assay. So a Q1 or Q3 pair known as translation is going to be very unique for a parent ion or the precursor ion and its corresponding daughter or the fragment ions. How that will look if I just simplify this here. You got one precursor ion, which you have seen some of the peptides, which we were looking at into the mass spec data analysis, which is generating several product ions, which are going to generate different type of Y ions, and that is going to constitute your SRM chromatogram. So you are going to look at different transitions of these precursor ion and product ion pairs. Again, whole day today we are going to talk about this again and again in different contexts of SRM, PRM, and while looking at Skyline, which we would like all of you to do that, you will get more confident that how best you can interpret these kind of data sets. I'm just showing you utility of these things in the practical situation. Recently, we did a project on the COVID-19 at the time when situation was very tense. We had all the lockdown and there was not much reagents available. So we looked at these mild patient and severe patients of COVID, and we looked at the label-free quantification based work from the plasma proteome analysis. And just I'm giving you a nutshell to justify the significance of this technology. And different proteins like angiotensinogen, apolipo-B protein, serpin protein, or fibrinogen gamma chain, many of these which are showing you the trends like going increasing trend in the label-free quantification. Now we wanted to take these to validation strategy to test on hundreds of samples, and there was no antibodies available, and there was no possibility to acquire antibody as well during this time. So we quickly went to the targeted based validation, and thanks to these strategies which does not require any separate reagent. So you have the peptide, and you can just simply now go to triple quadrupole mass spec or Orbitrap mass spec and develop the MRM or PRM assay, and you can see beautiful test could be developed, which we tried, and we already patented in fact this one to look into non-severe and severe comparison of many of these proteins which I showed you, showing exactly similar response in the independent set of samples while doing validation using selected reaction monitoring assays. So I hope this gives you some idea that how you can quickly take your mass spec based label based or label free leads and then validate them quickly using a different independent platform and much more robust platform. While here it takes you several hours to separate your peptides of interest. You take at least 2 or 3 hours of label-free quantification runs, right? Here in this case, the test could be simply between 3 minutes to 10 minutes because we are using high flow here, and the each run is very short, and you can monitor so many peptides and their translation just simply 10 minutes time. So very much clinically applicable, these kind of tests can be developed. So I'm just, I don't want to make it only lecture-oriented session right now because we want to show you how to do these tests, how to start the experiments, and we are going to go to the lab shortly to do these things, and then we will talk again more about basics. But let me just reiterate that it is easy right now to find out lot of changes or the abundance-based measurements, right? But it is very important to be reproducible and very important to validate your hypothesis on the independent set of samples. There is a lot of efforts going on from Human Proteome Organization, lot of efforts being made by Journal of Proteome Research to provide lot of guidelines as well as different type of community-wise tests done in different labs, show the inter-reproducibility, intra-reproducibility. I think it's really important for all of you who are aspirant in working in the field of proteomics to really try to read these papers and try to follow these guidelines and look for how best you can make your experiment robust and more reproducible. I think that's all for this from my side right now. I'm now going to take you to the lab, and we are going to start one experiment to on a different instrument. Earlier we tried to separate our peptides on the Orbitrap Fusion, which was a discovery set data which you have analyzed on the MaxQuant. But now we will be moving on to a triple quadrupole based mass spectrometer for showing you the targeted assay. All right, so let me now shift to the lab and we will do the experiment. All right. So what we are going to do, we have already prepared the peptides as we have seen earlier. Those peptides were quantified, and good thing is if you can speed vac and you can dry the peptides, those can be stored in the freezers. You can reconstitute whenever you want to do your test. So right now we are going to start the experiment on this instrument, which is one of the triple quad mass spectrometers. So just I showed you Q1, Q2, Q3, right? And we are looking at Q1 and Q3, how the your product, and you can monitor from the precursor the product for the transitions. So that's something is going to happen in this part. And for this instrument, we are going to have this micro LC for looking at the high flow and the short gradient. So Meher will show you injection of this sample.
Now we are taking BSA sample and we'll keep it in this particular position in white tray, yellow tray. So we are keeping it as YA1 position. So that is something to be remembered. So it is kept at YA1, orange one.
The screen is not shared. The screen is not shared.
All right, so that's good to know. Sorry, we will do that. I hope you can see it now.
Yeah, alternatively, one can pin the screen of whoever is talking, so that also can be done even if it is not shared. Thank you.
No problem. So I hope you can see it now. So what we are showing that we are going to do experiment now in this instrument, which is one of the triple quad mass spectrometer, and this instrument is going to be utilized for showing the targeted assay. Although we can do similar thing on the Orbitrap as well, as we will talk about PRM, we will do that. But right now we are doing SRM, MRM assay, which we will do on this CSQ instrument, triple quad. So here, you can see the electrospray ionization part remains the same what we have seen earlier, right? And that is the advantage that whatever we have optimized for ionization of peptides in our previous instrument for discovery, now same concept can be utilized here. But to make the test more rapid, we are going to utilize here a different type of LC, not nano LC, but the UHPLC. And now here it's showing you injecting a sample.
So it is kept at a particular position in the auto sampler tray, and now a method has been already created. So before a sample to be injected, we need to run a blank as well, and after the sample also we should run a blank. So in the queue we can see, so one blank is set, and for this BSA one queue is made in which we have written file name, path in which we have written file name, path where the file to be saved, and particular instrument method where we will show you how to create this method during the demo session, and also at what position the sample is kept, and also the injection volume. So injection volume depends upon how much amount of peptide we need to inject. So accordingly we have set a particular injection volume. So now because the queue is selected, and now we can select it and run the sequence. So here as it is showing waiting for acquisition. So once the sample is start running, we can see the chromatogram. So after some time you can...
for 10 minutes?
Yes, the gradient is for 10 minutes.
All right, everyone. So this is going to be a much faster an experiment, whereas they will talk, the experiment will actually finish and you can see some results in front of you, right? Unlike the previous discovery experiment which we did on the fusion, where you have to run for 2 hours or so to get one data file. Here in every 10 minutes you will see one run to be completed, and from the same sample you can actually monitor many peptides. So right now we are only going to look for a standard protein like BSA, but as we go along we will inject more of the unknown samples and try to show you different peptides and transition screening from the same sample type. So now experiment already started. As we will do, we will show you this in the live in between the lectures, so that you are feeling you are in the workshop and you are doing experiments. I hope you are understanding that sample prep remains the same. Only thing which has changed now, an instrument has changed from the Q-TOF or Orbitrap. It has now changed to the either you're going to use the triple quad or you can also use an Orbitrap for developing this test. So I think that's pretty much in terms of an overview of the talk as well as starting the experiment. And what I will do now, I will request Mr. Saicharan, one of my PhD students from the lab, to give you all a basic about developing a SRM assay, and he has been really instrumental and worked very closely with Brendan as well as the Thermo team to optimize many of these things in my lab. So he will be giving you an overview about developing a targeted assay and what are the practical considerations for that. So over to you, Saicharan. You can take over and start your presentation.
Yeah, hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. So I hope I'm audible. I'm just
yes, you are.
making sure that, yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, so before I start, I would like to acknowledge everyone from the proteomics lab, especially sir, for having given me this opportunity. And then I would also like to acknowledge the entire team which has developed Skyline, that is the MacOS lab, where Brendan McLean is the chief software engineer, the software developer for this particular software. So without delaying any further, let us get started with the talk. So sir has already covered the basics of SRM, right? So I will not talk about the different names that are given to the technique. So we will directly look at the principle behind selected reaction monitoring. So in Sir's talk, it was very evident that this experiment is majorly performed on a triple quadruple instrument. So the configuration, as you can see here, is So the configuration you see here is 3 quadrupoles, wherein the second quadrupole acts as a collision cell. So the quadrupoles have an amazing ability to filter peptides based on the mass to charge ratio. Okay, so they are basically mass filters. So we exploit this property of the quadrupole and allow only a selected group of peptides through the instrument. Okay, so as you can see in this example, for quadrupole 1, there is a set of peptide which is there's a peptide which has entered through the quadrupole 1. This peptide gets fragmented in the collision cell once you provide the energy that is required to break this peptide. And when that happens, the peptide gets fragmented to different ions. So the ions and the peptide have a specific mass to charge ratio, and it's a selective. So we let mass to charges of selected ions to pass through the instrument. So over a period of time, what you see here is a signal which looks something like this. Okay, and these values are all specified by the user. So this is where the user has a complete control on the parameters of the experiment. Unlike the shotgun approaches, where the instruments select the peptides based on very minimal parameters that are set by the user. Here, the user has a much higher control over what goes inside the instrument and how the data would look like. So this image is of an actual quadrupole from a Shimadzu LCMS 8050 instrument. I had the opportunity of clicking this when the instrument was being serviced at the Shimadzu facility. So let us try to understand this with the help of an example. You see here, there is this particular peptide which will give rise to around 11 fragments when it gets cleaved at each of these specific bonds. Okay, so this is the peptide that we are talking about, and you can see that for a doubly charged species of this peptide, the mass to charge here is 678.83. Okay, so this so basically, if the peptide carries a +2 charge, this is what the quadrupole 1 will the value that you set for the first quadrupole. And if you try to visualize what I had spoken in the previous slide, the Q1 would let this particular peptide through, And then when this gets fragmented, it gives rise to multiple fragments here. So one of the fragments that we are talking about is 531.29, which will arise if the peptide, if the fragmentation happens here at this place. Okay, so from this table, you can see that the collision energy for each of these fragments is the same. So on providing 26.4 electron volts, you'll see that the peptides get fragmented at different points. And every time the quadrupole 3 will allow a specific fragment to pass through. So now I'll introduce you to a few terms which are very constantly used in an SRM experiment. So the first is the dwell time. So this is the time that the instrument requires to monitor one particular data point. Okay, and accumulation time and acquisition time are the terms that are used to describe the time that is needed to pick up each of these fragments. Okay, so another term that Sir had used when he was giving the introduction is the term transition. So this pair that you see, the value of quadrupole 1 and the value of quadrupole 3 is unique to this particular peptide and the fragment that has come that results from the fragmentation. Okay, so this Q1 to Q3 combination is called or the Q1 to Q3 pair is called a transition. So when I say transition 1 for this peptide, it is implied that it would be this Q1 value and this Q3 value, and subsequently the next transition, the next, right? So transitions are the transition is the term that is used to describe one Q1 to Q3 pair. So taking the example forward, as I spoke just a while back, the quadrupole 1 here has allowed this particular peptide through, and after the fragmentation, different fragments have developed, and the first fragment has been allowed to pass through the Q3. Subsequently, the second, the third, the fourth. Now the sum total of all these dwell times. So for 250 milliseconds, the first transition was allowed to pass through. Then the next 250 milliseconds, the next transition, the next, right? So the sum total of all these times for one particular cycle is called a cycle time. So say if your experiment has only 100 transitions, okay, the sum total of all the dwell times dwell times for collecting one data point each 100 times is the cycle time for that experiment. So if I were to say 10 milliseconds is the time that you gave for one transition and your experiment had 100 transitions, your cycle time in such a case would be 100 into 10. Okay, those many milliseconds. So that is 1 second. So in 1 second, the instrument will collect one data point each for each of those 100 transitions. But then that is not the end of it, right? So here, what you have seen here at the end of this particular 1 second is that there are 4 data points, each data point corresponding to one transition. But if you try to go back and try to recollect the first slide that I had shown, where there was a peak, there was a trace, right? SRM trace. For that to happen, you'll need at least 8 to 12 data points. So the experiment is performed in such a way that these transitions are monitored repeatedly, okay, till a particular peak. Sorry, sir. Yeah.
May I just interrupt you for a minute? So we will just share the screen and see the live run, like how far the run has reached. Because again, all of you can appreciate that the tests are very fast, right? Sachin is talking to you about the cycle time and the dwell time. So it's happening in milliseconds and seconds. So what we are doing that experiment, we have taken the standard protein BSA, and we are trying to monitor different peptides of BSA for showing that how best to do MRM muscle on that. So the run is only for 10 minutes. We just want to show you how that run is coming. And then we will continue with the lecture, and then we will look for another run on the same. So may I request Meher or Abhilash to please share the screen and show the live run?
Just 1 second, sir. I am connecting to AnyDesk.
All
Meher.
right. Yes. So yeah, these experiments are really exciting because you can in a very quick time you can try to see is your predictions for whatever collision energy which you have defined, whatever dwell time you have thought about, is it all working for developing the target assay or not? And even if it does not work out in single shot, you can always try to refine the method and go back and then try to. Yeah, so currently we are showing you, just the standard protein peptide from BSA, but same concept will be applicable when you look into your complex samples and you want to now look at maybe 100 peptides or 50 peptides. You can go to several hundreds of transitions, which you can screen in single shot injection. So the technique is quite powerful in that way. And while developing these type of tests, you have to keep very many guidelines in mind, which is not the scope of this presentation right now. We will take that in the subsequent lecture when we talk at 12:30 about what all things you can keep in mind. But I think given the nature of these tests, which are very robust and you can be easily taking from one mass spec to other mass spec, I think they can be much closer for developing the clinical test as compared to going for the antibody generation or developing the antibody based test. Also, the quality control checks of the instruments is very important parameter, very important for showing that what you are measuring and your abundance of the peptides are reproducible. That is only possible if you are showing the reproducibility of instruments as well. And therefore, BSA being run every day, which we also try to monitor some peptides of BSA with a software and interface from Panorama. And that is another thing which we'll talk in the afternoon session, that what are the system suitability considerations and parameters to ensure that you can always say that, okay, my control what says that treatment is showing this much intensity change, but is that really going to work out? It's not going to be acceptable until unless you show that system performance is good. And for doing that, BSA is injected every day, and we do system suitability test with certain parameters which are being recorded in Panorama every day. So those will be talked in some time. Meher, are we ready now? So in any case, Richard, you will stop around 10:58 or so. Okay, because
Okay,
they will
sir.
lecture you. If there are some slides
Yeah.
cannot be finished, we can take that in the 12:30 session, because don't rush.
Okay.
These are, I think, important to to finish it off. But we just don't
Sure.
want to make it very formal lectures right now. We do want people to feel they are doing a workshop and they are doing experiments, and that's where doing things live is actually important.
Yeah.
And truly speaking to all the participants, even if you were to come to IIT or to in our labs, only thing which you will do physically from your side is injecting the samples in the instrument, and rest things will be only seen on the software and the data analysis part. I'm hoping that all of you are also ready with downloading the Skyline software, which we have given you the instructions and guidelines over the weekend. If not, please start doing that, because that's at 12:30
Hello,
session.
sir.
Yes,
Yes, the screen is ready to be shown now.
please do that. Share the screen.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, it's coming now. Yeah, you can go ahead and explain it now.
Yes. So as we can see here in the queue, we had set in the second row was the blank, and then the third one was the unknown BSA. So first blank is over now. And from here we can see which sample is over, that would be blue, and that one that is running now is green in color. So here in the real time manner we can see, and we can see these chromatogram that sample run has been started. And from here we can see that the total gradient was for 10 minutes. and till now it has been reached to 3.5 minutes. So after 7 minutes, the run would be over. And these are the different chromatogram we can see from this. So there are different, such as one is time versus the relative abundance, and another is to the pump pressure is showing, and third one is the temperature. So after 7 minutes, we will get the data, and then this data would be, the raw file would be analyzed using Skyline.
All right, thank you, Meher. So I think this is good. At the end of Saichiran's talk, we can again flash the slides. Please be ready with the keeping the sharing window available. Saichiran,
Yes,
please continue now.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm sharing the screen again. Yeah. So so yes. So we spoke about one data point being collected, right, for this experiment. So what happens over a period of your 10-minute gradient that you've set is that the instrument collects multiple data points, and what you see is a peak, which looks something similar to this. Now, it is very important that you have an idea as to what is the time at which your peptide elutes out, right? So you need to have a strong knowledge of the chromatographic setup that you're using, and an idea of how your peptides behave when they elute. Okay. Also, the width of your peak. So, so how long does your peak actually elute out for? So you can see in this particular example, the actual peak started eluting, say, from time X, okay, and then the elution continued till this point, right? So you need to also have an idea as to for how many seconds or how many minutes does your peak elute out. So it's very important that you have a very strong chromatographic knowledge to make sure that your experiment works well. So there is this a very important paper. I strongly recommend that you all take a read, give a read to this particular paper. I've mentioned the reference here, which talks about the importance of all these parameters on your peak shape, right? So how good your peak looks like and how good the data is depends largely on the balance between the dwell time, the cycle time, and also your chromatography. So without wasting much time, I quickly jump to this to the different parameters that are needed for the success of an SRM experiment. So from the examples that we just looked a couple of minutes back, it is important that you first have an idea as to what are the different proteins and the peptides that you wish to monitor. Okay, so that is very important because this is a hypothesis based experiment, right? Unlike most other shotgun experiments that you had discussed over the last 1 week, targeted experiments are largely hypothesis driven. So if you are looking for validating a hypothesis, if you know of certain proteins which are to be studied in detail, that is when you choose the targeted experiment. So the first parameter and the foremost is that you have an idea of what are the target proteins that you want to monitor. Second is the best peptides for these proteins. So theoretically, for any protein, I mean, every single peptide is good, right? I mean, it talks about the protein, but experimentally, when you look at your data, you'll see that certain peptides for a protein are high flying. So you see them very often, even in your shotgun experiments. When you carefully look at the data, you'll see that certain peptides are seen in much higher abundance than the others. Okay, then certain peptides which are specific regions in that protein, which are specific to that protein, are also usually seen. So while selecting these peptides and proteins, you need to dive deep into what peptides are unique and representative of the protein. The third parameter is the selection of the transitions per peptide. So in this particular example, you can see we have missed out on Y9. Okay, the reason for that may be that is that the Y9 fragment does not get very easily identified. It doesn't get detected very easily, right? So over a period of time, you understand that there are certain transitions which are better performing over the others and more reliable, right? So since the whole idea is to quantify the protein, you need to ensure that all the peptides, proteins, and the transitions that you are monitoring are reliable enough for quantification. The next point is identification, selection of the instrument parameters. So for that, you need to play with the dwell times, the cycle times, the collision energy. So these are all the different instrument parameters. The chromatography, right? Which is upstream to the MS, also needs to be optimized. So all these parameters are very crucial for setting up an SRM experiment. And this is not something which you'll understand in just a day. You'll have to work with your samples, and then you get an idea as to what works best. In the final experiment usually doesn't take a lot of time, as we have seen, right? Once you have all these set, the experiment will just take 10 minutes to finish, and then is the data analysis. So selection of the targets, we just spoke extensively. It could be from literature, it could be from your own shotgun experiments. It could also be from gene expression experiments. So you need not have necessarily performed any shotgun experiments in the past. You could have a set of genes that you wish to, that you know play a particular role, and you are wanting to look at the expression at the protein level. So for such genes, you can directly look at the proteins, right? And also from any protein interaction data. So all these are the different sources from which you can get your protein targets. I will not spend a lot of time on this because we'll be sharing the PPT, so you could take a look at the different resources that are available, public data repositories that are available, wherein you can you can choose the proteins and the peptides. Then yeah, so this is something which you can take a look at personally and take forward. So I now emphasize on the very crucial parameters that are that require optimization for SRM experiment, and the 1 or 2 parameters which you can do away with, so it doesn't really affect your experimental output. So a target protein, selection of the right peptides, which are good for quantification. We usually use the term quantotypic peptides for such peptides. And then the different parameters such as the precursor mass to charge, the fragment mass to charge. So the ones marked in red are the strictly required parameters. So you have to have a very sound understanding of these parameters, and you have to know, you need to know these parameters beforehand for your experiment to be a success. But the other parameters may not be are not very important. If you can optimize those, good. But if you cannot, then you can still do away with them. So here, these are the 3 different parameters which you can always. I mean, you don't need to do not need to have any prior knowledge. So see, this is how the data looks like after your experiment. So here you can very clearly see that there are peaks which have co-eluted, right? Where there is a slight difference in the retention time. So you can clearly say that this is not the right data, right? So the next point is peak shape. So if the output, if your peak doesn't look like a perfect Gaussian peak, you can clearly say that, oh, this may or may not be my peak, right? The next is signal intensity. So when you know that the intensity of your peak or the abundance of a peak is very high, you can with some surety say that, oh, this might be my peak, or this might be the peptide and the transitions that I'm looking at. So for optimum peak identification and for data analysis, you don't need to really have any pre-existing knowledge for these parameters, that is coelution, peak shape, and signal intensity. So after having heard Sir speak, after having looked at a few slides from my end, you would think that this is how the data looks like, right? Everything's very clean. There's one big peak of your peptide and the transitions. These are the transitions. So this is how the data must look like. But we all know that this is not the usually the scenario. You see, this is how the data looks like. It's very, it can be very noisy. You might have 2 or more peaks which have very high abundance, and then you are in a fix as to what is the actual signal, which among these peaks is the right peak, right? So for that, yes, sir. Yeah.
Great. So I think this looks like a good point to to have a pause, and just for the whole audience here. So main thing is what you have seen so far, when everything goes so well and things come really a sharp peak around the expected retention time, and you just have not much doubt about what you're looking at is the right peak or not. But many times you have a lot of co-eluting peak and you have a lot of noise, and you have to really find out what you are looking at is the right peak of your peptides of interest, and then you have to do a lot of refinement over there. So in the second session, we will be actually asking all of you to do some analysis on the skyline and also try to look into this type of data and try to see, can you look for the right peak, or can you refine that peak? So some of these things will become much more apparent as you go along in the day. I think I'll just ask Bilash or Meher to share the screen once more before we close this session and see the live run.
Dr. Sanjeeva, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead. In the meantime, we can take some questions.
The question is that during the transition that you have shown, Q1 by Q3, so Q1 you have a doubly charged peptide ions. So while in Q3, do we have a singly charged peptide ions?
No. So you are starting with the, let's say, whether doubly charged or triply charged. Now you are looking at their further fragmentation at the B ions and Y ions. So what you are looking at the the different Y ions over there or different B ions over there, and that's where I showed you that from the same precursor you can have Y2 to YN variety of fragments which you're going to monitor, right? I think this will become more important when we start from the scratch, when we will give you peptide sequence and you will run a line and you will make your own translation list. I think this will become much more apparent. But you can select different type of charge state to start with. But your transitions are going to increase more. If you take +2, +3, your transitions are going to increase. So we, in general, our practical experience, we take +2, but you can always do it +2, +3, or even more, right? So that is one.
Okay, thank you.
Great. From team, can you share once more screen before we start the next session from Mr. Mark?
Yes, sir. Sir, the run is over now. Should I still? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, so now it is so the run is over, and if there is another sample in queue, so it would have been seen in this
previous
time window.
Can you show the previous completed run?
Yes, sir. So after the run, so in the particular folder, as in today's date, one raw file has been generated, and then this would be visible when we import it in the Skyline. So that would be covered in that part would be covered in the demo session.
That's right. So all right, so you can see here the tests are very quick, and it shows the utility of using triple quadrupole based assays for doing something which is more close to the clinical translational part, right? All right, with this, let's end the session. So thank you, Saichiran, thank you, Meher and team here to show the live experiments. And the experiments will be continued as we go along in the day, and we will share with the participants how the results comes out from that, right? All right, so that's all for this session. And I can see Professor Mark Baker there, and I can see Dr. Surekha Jingde there. So it's really great to see some of our very distinguished colleagues here. Professor Mark, let me just take a minute to start your session.
Good morning, sir.